I'm just going to show you some tips and ideas for editing infrared photography in Affinity Photo. Okay, so I took this image using a converted infrared camera with a 590 nanometer filter, which means we get plenty of false color information to work with. Before we start editing this though, I'm going to jump across to this raw file I'm developing and show you a neat little trick. Now, this was shot with the camera's auto white balance, which has resulted in quite a strong red color cast. And it requires quite an extreme white balance shift to correct. Now, people might be used to using custom input profiles, for example, to correct this shift. But in the Develop persona within Affinity Photo, all we need to do is select the white balance tool, and then we can balance off some foliage here. So I'll just click one of these leaves and it will perform the required white balance shift. Okay, it's now underexposed, so we can just alter the brightness and then move across to the tones panel and just add a bit of a tone curve to brighten up the image. However, if I zoom in, we can see that the image is quite noisy, and this is because the camera has exposed in order to avoid clipping the red channel because of the heavy red color cast, thereby underexposing the green and blue channels. So less precision in those channels, and it results in a noisier final image when we go to develop it. So for that reason alone, I would always recommend manually white balancing before you shoot infrared. You can white balance off foliage, that's a common example, or even a white balance card. Okay, let's move back to editing the main image then. So the first thing we're going to do is a channel swap, to swap the red and blue channels over. This is quite common in infrared editing. We can go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Channel Mixer. Okay, and we have the red channel targeted already. So all we need to do is change the red contribution from 100 to 0, tab across to blue and type 100. Then we can move across to the blue channel. Again, just invert that process. So red becomes 100, blue becomes 0, and there we go. So this now lays the groundwork for some further color work that we're going to do. Now at this point, I'll just switch across to the Layers panel so we can see all of the adjustment layers we're adding to this document. Next, then, I'm going to add a color balance adjustment. Okay, and we're going to be focused on just the midtones. So what we're going to do is bring the cyan and red slider up, bring magenta and green down, and then yellow and blue goes down all the way. Okay, so that's quite a dramatic difference. We're starting to get that gold effect on the foliage and a nice blue sky in the background. Let's take this further by adding a selective color adjustment. Okay, so now for reds, we'll push magenta and yellow up. Then if we move across to yellows, we'll push magenta up slightly and then push yellow up all the way. Now across on cyan, that's affecting the sky here, we'll push cyan all the way and take yellow all the way down for a nice rich light blue sky. Okay, let's move across to neutrals. So with neutrals, we're just going to push magenta and yellow up slightly. Okay, and then if we switch across to blacks, we're going to push the cyan up. And all that's going to do is just take a bit of the red color out of the shadow detail here where the bandstand is. Good, okay, I'm happy with that. So let's increase the saturation of the colors. For that, we'll go to New Adjustment Layer and HSL. Okay, then I'll target reds. Just bring the saturation up slightly. Then yellows, and increase the saturation there too. Okay, now, as if things weren't saturated enough, let's add a vibrance adjustment. And we'll just bring the vibrance up slightly as well, just to make those colours a little bit richer. Okay, so now at this point, this is the benefit of using adjustment layers, is if we decide that we have gone too far with the colour saturation, we can simply just double click an adjustment layer and go back in and tweak the settings. Okay, let's round off with a levels adjustment then, just to give the image a bit more punch. So I'll select the vibrance adjustment. This just makes sure that when I add the levels adjustment, it gets added to the top of the layer stack and therefore affects everything else underneath it. New adjustment layer, levels. Okay, and as we can see on the histogram here, we can just bring the black level in a little bit before we start clipping the luminance there, and then just bring the white level down. And there we go, a nice punchy infrared image. So if I just shift click all of these adjustment layers and turn them off, here is our starting image. And with a series of adjustment layers, we've managed to achieve a nice, vibrant, edited infrared image. So there we go. Just a few tips and ideas for you to try out with your own infrared imagery.